area holes that we do, right? It's quality over it's like, there's so much difference between some of
Is that too much amp?
No, it's good. The amp's on? Turn it up.
It might be a tad much.
I know that.
Stop it! Just, I can't perform when you're in the audience.
We have to thank Peter that there is something, that's all I thought of.
Why, what? Oh, thank you. I'm good. I'm glad.
Okay, Mimi, is there anybody else out there?
Well, yes.
They're
Here they
in.
come.
Flicking lights.
Okay,
Let me drink, I'll be right back.
okay, so you're my die-hard, long-suffering audience. Willing to endure my trial balloon here.
There's still wine, so you know.
That would make us short suffering.
That's one, yeah, right. So I didn't have any idea, actually, really totally, how long that first piece was going to be. Probably almost an hour and 20 minutes. I pretty much know how long this is, and so this is about 25 minutes. And then I'll let you go, okay? All right? All right. Deal. If you can dream a dream worth dreaming, then dream and keep on keeping on. If you can make a wish worth making, fill your wish with action strong. When I was a young lad, my father used to read me bedtime stories. And most of those stories were stories of the sea, Treasure Island, Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson. But my favorite story was The Wind in the Willows. Maybe you've read The Wind in the Willows. My favorite part of The Wind in the Willows was where Water Rat says to Mole, he says to Mole, truly, my dear Mole, there is nothing, absolutely nothing half so much worth doing as messing about in boats. Messing, simply messing about in boats. And from the time I heard those words, I wanted a boat of my own, a sailboat. I thought if I had a sailboat of my own, well, maybe someday when the kids grow up, maybe when the kids leave home, I'll have a sailboat of my own. When I'm rich, when there's time, when the kids leave home, I'll have me a sailboat of my own. Have you ever walked past an ocean dock or pier and stopped to gaze, to dream at the boats and the slips out there? I mean the sailing boats with lofty mast and boom, their hulls so close for lack of room that it would seem almost impossible to haul even the line of sailing twine between. Well, that's happened so many times to me that I sometimes wonder, since our bodies are 80% water and since the Earth's surface is 80% water, I sometimes wonder, are we irresistibly drawn like the tide to the moon to the roaring, rolling, salty sea? Probably not. But it makes sense to me. I think the sea is in our blood, and I think it goes back long before Noah's flood. Back to primordial pools and swamps, to willow reed rafts and firelit camps. I'll give you an example. My father's great 10 times great grandfather, Isaac Stearns, in 1632 piloted the good ship Arabella laden with pilgrims across the Atlantic Sea. Landed in Watertown, Mass. Everybody up through Tennant's Harbor, Mount Desert, they're all Stearns from Isaac. And Isaac's sons were sailors too, and my father shares the same attraction that his father felt in his before. Although my father's never felt compelled to throw money after a sailboat of his own. But he understood my fire to be out in the water, because when I was 10, he made a plan to hatch my desire. He gave me the gift of sailing lessons on a nearby pond. And that forged between us an unbreakable bond, which has grown ever stronger from that day on. And then the years rolled along, as they always do, and I moved away. About 40 years ago, Dad indulged a desire of his own. He bought a small cottage in Port Clyde, Maine. It was once a sheep farmer's shack. It had tar-shingled walls, a sloping lawn out front, and a privy in the woods out back. But best of all was the Port Clyde Pier with those beautiful sailing boats out there. Boats with lofty mast and boom, yet their hulls were not packed for lack of room, for each was moored alone and riding free the way a creature of the sea would truly love to be. So from that summer on, each and every July, the Stearns headed down east for old Port Clyde, with their wagon cram full of kites, bats, and balls, frisbees, fish poles, footballs, and tools, a paintbrush, a duct tape, thank God for duct tape, a chainsaw, tent, guitar, ukulele, on and on the list went. We had books, correspondence, and food for a year, just in case we got snowed in August up there. We had every base covered for work and play, every base except one. No boat of our own to sail on the bay. And though the sun shone down on us day after day, I felt chained to the dock, condemned to watch others at their watery play, messing about in boats. They were part of a world I could not reach. Their sails would seem to luff with each laughing luff. They seem to laugh at me. They seem to be saying, come on out, come ride the waves. Come on out, come feel the spray. Come on out, come ride the spray. Come on out and play. How I wanted to follow them, but there were no boats for rent. And buying one, well, the thought had crossed my mind, but which boat would I buy? And how could I afford it? And how would I tow it? And where would I launch it? Or moor it or dock it? And even if I could afford it, tow it, launch it, moor it, and dock it, what if, as I was docking, there were to come up a raging gale? I could be swept off the deck by the jibing sail. Then the runaway boat with their tiller set free would swerve directly in front of the Monhegan ferry, the Blora B, packed with 80 tons of tourists and gear. She'd plow my boat under, or cut her in two, or fold her like cardboard round the posts of the pier. And worst of all, the locals would chuckle like I'd made their day. Aye, Everett, don't look now, but down goes another one from away. So I thought I really should buy a sailboat, but I never got past the thinking part until one summer, one July, Bonnie, Dylan, Ian, and I were walking along the Port Clyde Pier, staring down into the water, studying the styrofoam cups and those seawater-filled cans of less filling light beer. When by chance, looking up, a boat caught my eye. A wind-pregnant sail slid silently by. Now, she was not a two-masted mansion with brass rails and decks of polished teak. No, just a basic day sailor. But to me, she looked low, trim, and sleek. Now, the man at her helm looked crusty, weathered, and bowed. But he moved about that boat with the ease of a cat. He stood on the transom like a chariot driver, though his rig she pitched and she rolled. With one foot on the tiller, he guided her true. She crested a swell, she billowed. She flew past the pier where I stood. Then coming about, her sails on the luff like an exhalation of breath before catching the puff, she heeled so close I could just about touch the telltale at the head of her sail. Then her starboard shroud groaned taut like the string of a bow, and away she sped, a rooster tail in her wake, all frothing and sparkling like fresh powder snow. My heart took a flip. It beat like a drum as my gaze held that sloop out there, plowing along down the diamond-flecked highway laid down by the sun. I felt my feet walking, then they started to run. I ran on the dock, she on water, I on land. I thought if I could only catch up with her, touch her hull with my hand, so I ran. I ran past the dip net snack bar. Into the general store, down the aisle with the postcards and out the front door, past the bait shop, the dry dock, and out to the public pier. But there was no way I could catch her. She was way, way, way out there. When suddenly she luffed once again, and coming about and straining her sheet, she headed downwind straight down at me, closer and closer, and closer until she docked right at my feet. If you can make a wish worth making, make your wish, fill it with action strong. Now, like I said, the man at her helm looked crusty, weathered, and old, but he moved about that boat with the ease of a cat. He had the mainsail down, the centerboard up, the bow painter cleated, and the bilge bailed like that. I touched her hull, and I knew in my heart I wanted this boat for my own, and I had questions I had questions about it. I wanted to ask him, but I didn't ask him, not even one. Well, the old guy said nothing. He smiled and reefed his sail, which flapped in a violent luff. But then he jumped on the dock and prepared to cast off, And this voice in my heart said, enough. If you've got questions you want to ask this man, ask them. If you don't, you're going to piss me off. Well, the voice sounded compelling, so I said, excuse me, sir. I sure do like your boat. He said, well, she's 40 years old, but still one of the safest afloat. Sails like a dream for one man of four. She's beamy but swift. Shame they don't make them like this anymore. Dealer went high-tech 20-odd years ago. Now they sell for 10 times the price with gear you don't need. I said, I know what you mean. I completely agree. All I want is a basic boat, a boat I can sail with my kids. I don't need a fabulous, expensive sloop with bells and whistles. I need a basic boat like this. Well, he undid his painter, leaped on board, grabbed his tiller, and pointed her out to sea. But then he let his sheet go slack and he turned and he said to me, and he said it in a kindly sort of way, he said, I restore boats like this on the way to the grave. And if she needs a new home with some kids on a rail. I patched up her hull. She could use a new sail. And I'll throw in a trailer. You want her, she's yours. For $1,000 in cash. By the way, my name's George Baggett. Then he trimmed his sail, caught the wind, and was gone. $1,000 in cash. That's exactly the amount I'd saved in the bank when I suddenly flashed, wait a minute. I don't know his phone number. I didn't get his address. I ran on the shore, yelling out at the wind. He yells back, Tenants Harbor! 4 o'clock's when I'll be in. Take the dirt road to the fish market where the sign says caught in. And then like a mirage, he vanished and was gone. Now, like I said, $1,000 is exactly the amount I had saved in the bank. Saved, but not earned. You see, my mother's mother and father, just 2 months before, had died, 2 days apart. She was 95, he was 94. And my mother, generous soul that she is, decided to give a small portion of her inheritance to each of her kids. Exactly $1,000 she gave each of us to spend on the condition that it could not be used for clothes, bills, or food, but alone on a whim, on a dream, on a ludicrous spree. I thought to myself, this is it. And this boat is for me. Well, I'm gonna have the sailboat. Lady Luck, I got you to thank. Well, I'm gonna have the sailboat, the sailboat. Lady Luck, I got you to thank. Ain't gotta wait no more. I got the money in the bank. Now I don't care if it's blue, I don't care if it's green. It can be chartreuse with purple polka dots, the ugliest color ever seen. But I have this sailboat, and Lady Luck, I get you to thank. I don't have to wait no more. I got the money in the bank. I ran down the shore, ran up to Bonnie and the kids, and I told them the news. But Bonnie didn't jump up and down. She didn't dance a jig. She didn't laugh. She didn't give me a hug. She didn't even smile. She took a rather different point of view. She said, Stephen, are you out of your mind? $1,000 for a sailboat, 40 years old? How do you know it'll float? I mean, it may have holes in the bottom. He's patched up you can't see. Who is this man? You just met him. How do you know you can trust him? I wouldn't rush into this if it were me. Besides, sailing is very dangerous. I mean, this is Maine. The water's very cold. What if the kids fall overboard? They'll drown. What if you capsize? I mean, you could drift out. The fog could drift in. Have you researched the market? Have you researched the market to see what else is for sale? How do you know this is a good deal if you don't go to a boatyard and see what else is for sale? Well, her words were true. They were true, and they brought back my very worst fears, and they charged down upon me in force. And I thought, she's right. And then I thought, hell, who cares? I'm going to stay on course. So I drove us all to the Thomason Boat Yard, where the dealer showed us rows of boats, and all of them were fiberglass with those mirror-like gel coats. A stand-up paddleboard was $650. Used Sunfish $12.95. 10-year-old Pearson $35,000. I said, excuse me, sir, can you sell us the starboard side? He laughed and walked away. I said, no, seriously, come back, sir, please. Can't you sell us a simple sloop, a sloop like we saw in the bay? And he said, no, and if I could, I'd save it for my family. Those sloops are very rare. They're classics. Why, have you seen one like it yourself? I said, who, me? No. Just got a picture of one in a book at home on the shelf. George's price, $1,000 in cash, was beginning to sound pretty darn good. I looked at Bonnie, she looked at me, and I thought she understood. So I said, George said for $1,000 he'd throw a trailer in. She smiled, I winked, and back we drove to the sign that said, caught in. Well, we made it by 4, we waited an hour, but there wasn't a sign of George. We waited 1 hour, 2, no George, no trailer, no sailboat the color of blue. And I thought to myself, you incredible fool, such a deal could never be true. That guy's a joker, he's out there sailing, he's sailing and laughing at you. Why would a man with a classical sloop ever sell it for such a sum? Come on, boys, I think I've been had, it's late, we better get home. I was feeling so dumb, let my emotions get all carried away, got the boys all hyped up. Now I let everybody down. I drove without seeing the road. It was hot, we were tired, it was late. Seemed like a long way home. But all the time we were going along, Dylan from the back seat was hitting my arm. Stop it, Dylan. Dylan, leave me alone. Dad! What? Dad, didn't that man have white hair? Yeah, he had white hair. And didn't he have a beard? Dylan, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to Dad. Didn't he have a beard? Yeah, he had a scraggly one. He needed a shave. And wasn't the sailboat blue? Yeah, the sailboat was blue. And didn't it have a wooden mast? Yes, it had a wooden mast. Daddy better turn the car around. That sailboat man drove past. Holy mackerel! I put the brake to the floor, did a country road U-turn, threw the kids against the door. If they trusted my driving, they don't anymore. I broke the speed limit. Heck, I broke the sound barrier. But I caught him just as he pulled in front of a beautiful cottage where the sign says caught in. Now the old guy, George, he was not like the least bit surprised to see us there, like he knew we'd be there. He invited us in. He served us tea and biscuits with his own homemade jam. You should have seen his kitchen, like a ship's galley, neat as a pin. The knives looked sharp. Dishes were stacked. Copper counters were clean. The windows had curtains, braided rugs on the floor. It had a woman's style and grace. And his workshop out back, with lobster buoys lining the rafters, had a place for everything and everything in its place. And a hand-lettered sign by the drill press read, use the right tool for the job. Enough said. I told George about my fascination with the sea and about great-great-granddaddy Isaac Stearns, and George smiled and scratched his beard and said, I bet some of my ancestors knew yours. I think Isaac Stearns, he piloted the good ship Arabella, if I remember right. My ancestors were captain and crew on quite a few of those flying square-rig ships. In fact, my great-great-great-great-granddaddy Baggett stopped off in Port Clyde after one of those trips. He and old Hupper were two of the first to farm sheep on the rocky land. I was amazed. I said, old Hupper? My father is the man 40 years ago that bought old Hupper's shack. You know, with the tar shingle walls, sloping lawn out front, and the privy in the woods out back. And he said, hey, I know who your father is, and the house is the very same. But does your father know that that privy sits on land that belongs to Blaine? I said, Blaine? You mean Blaine Cook? Blaine Cook, the guy that runs Johnny's Wharf, the guy we buy lobsters from? He said, hey, yeah, that's the Blaine I mean, Blaine Cook. He's the only one. I'll tell you a story about Blaine and me. Seems far-fetched, but it's true just the same. It was Christmas time. I was mooring my boat, Nancy. When at dusk it started to rain. Now the thermometer was at freezing, so the drizzle was icing as I stepped on the deck to get off. In the wink of an eye, I slipped and fell into the drink half a league off Blaine's Wharf. I had 5 minutes to live, maybe less, but no more. Not a chance in hell of swimming to shore in my slicker and boots. Don't panic, don't panic. The words rang in my ear, but my arms felt like lead weights. I just couldn't get air, couldn't catch my breath, like a slow-motion dream being pulled down by death. I panicked. I started clawing like hell at the hull, which had ice glazed across it. Hard as I pulled, I couldn't hold on. I opened my mouth, yelled for help. Water rushed down my throat. Next thing I knew, this gaffhook grabs my collar. It was Blaine sitting like a walrus in his little rowboat. He'd been salting down bait when he heard me go in. Hit his dinghy a running rode quicker than sin to my side. Took me 2 days by this stove to stop shaking and recover my pride. But I guess the other boys weren't laughing. It's a fisherman's worst fear, you see, to come on a circling boat. And you know in your gut somewhere under that boat, the skipper's gone down. And you gotta go and you gotta tell his wife and kids he ain't coming home. It's a hard thing to do, I know how it feels. My oldest boy, Bobby, he died in a Patagonian storm. He was a great swimmer too, almost from the day he was born, but they never found him. Seas got real rough with the winds round Cape Horn. George said that he'd sold his boat Nancy when his wife died of a stroke 10 years before. Now he gained peace and comfort from the boats he'd restore. You want to go for a sail? We all made a rush for the door. So George towed her to the dock and rigged her up, and soon we were on the waves. And I thank my stars for this man named George, saving sailboats from the grave. And since this boat I'd seen her first plowing down the road to the sun, I named her by the name of dreams, the old Delusion. We both had new life, my kids and my wife. If you catch them at their watery play, you listen close, you look right in, you might just hear them say, truly, my dear mole, there is nothing half so much worth doing as messing about in boats. Simply messing about in boats. Messing about in boats. Messing about in boats. Boats, boats, boats. Messing about in boats. So now she's my own, and Bonnie's and our sons, and for daughters and sons of their own. A boat like a home to return to, no matter where they roam. Salt water's in their blood now, the same as me, and I know they'll always be drawn to the roaring, rolling, salty sea, just like the wandering moon. And best of all, they will have a boat to ride on the tide of the pier, to strain her sheet, to reach and run with the other boats out there. Woo! Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! Now, there's one last thing I got to tell you. Whether or not you choose, you've noticed perhaps that I tried my best to accompany this story with the blues. Well, a few years back in November, I put illusion on her back. So come the spring, I could paint her fine and mend a hairline crack. So I dug 6 holes, cut 6 posts, and I sunk them in a row. Then I put illusion plumb on top just as it began to snow. Well, it snowed a dozen times that year. The boat could not be found except by sighting Mount Illusion, this white, majestic mound. Then along comes Gary Sanderson to plow the 13th storm. The day had dawned, the snow had stopped, the air was fresh and warm. His brand new truck with chrome mag wheels, it purred like Gary's grin. He eyed that 6-foot mound of snow and he vows, by God, I'll do it in. With this machine in 4-wheel drive, by gum, I'll move it back. He dropped his plow, spun his wheels, then comes this mighty crack. Now, some boats die a silent death as they slip beneath the waves. Other boats' ribs crack on the rocks as tombstones for their graves. But what boat goes under drifted snows? Not a chance of fighting back. No wind to dodge, no wave to roll, not even tide to slack, but to feel her ribs cracked by a plow while lying on her back? I was crushed, and so was illusion. But I said to myself, take heart. Keep on keeping on. You can make a wish worth making. Keep your wish and fill your wish with action strong. So I said to myself, well, George did his part, fate did hers. Now it's time for you to start. If George can take these neglected boats and save them from the grave, with some good hard work and some help with George, you'll have her back on the waves. And so it was with my 2 boys. We healed her broken back. And if you're ever down East Way and you take the Port Clyde track, stop by and have a bite of food, and then we'll have some fun. We'll take a sail and we'll hug the rail of the old Illusion. Well, we got us a sailboat of our own. Well, money's still tight and time is short, but we did it while the kids are home. We've got us a sailboat, take my friends with me. They'll heist the shale and hug the rail, I'll scream heartily. We've got us the sailboat, bring my friends along. We'll tuck them in like a sardine can and sing this sailing song. We've got us a sailboat, if the wind dies down, drop the sails and watch for whales, and the kids can paddle around. We got a sailboat of our own. We got a sailboat. Sailboat. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with my mess ups here, but you know, nobody held up a sign that said alkaline, please. Yeah, it's,
She's still in the water?
what's that?
She's still.
Yeah, she is. Well, she's in the shed. We're going up tomorrow early in the morning, and we're going up there, pull her out, make sure. Yeah, she's there, and so if you stop by, we'll go for a sail.
I'm just learning tonight that the Alki line police thing wasn't a gag, but was in fact real.
Yes, it was real.
They really forgot their lines.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
not know that.
Yeah, no, Lily Miriam would go, Alki line, please. I'd hold up a sign and everybody would say, you know. That started the whole thing with Science for Melodrama, where we always, cheer, boo, this and that, and just, it's true. It just seems that when you get into a clown world, and I think you could probably all get up here and tell 10 hours worth of stories about, you never expected this to come out of blue, just at this particular time or that, and then like, whoa, and we were talking a little about it there over cheese and crackers. I was talking with Steve about auditioning in New York City, the big deal. And this woman pushed her way through the crowd and booked Guildensterns for 10 years. Like 3 weeks of shows in the fall and 3 weeks in the spring. And she said, you're staying with us. And you don't stay in a motel. She said, Stephen, you got the third floor. Little did I know, I'd always stay up because the guy was a genius. He's been written up in Time magazine. He's been written up in the newspaper many times. And he was one of the main people that understood how to look at the market and understand what was going to happen. And everybody started making mince out of what, but he never said, I promised. It's just like, this is just a way you got to hedge your bets. But he went out to California. He left J.P. Morgan, and he became vastly wealthy. But they never forgot me. I had my cancer, $25,000 showed up. Then he said, you need a development director, $50,000 showed up. And I was with his son skiing at Grand Targhee on the way back. His son was in a rental vehicle, hit patch of ice and rolled over 3 times. I brought his son to the emergency room. So we were really tight, close family. His wife went to Brattleboro Union High School. And I didn't know that until, I found that out but because of 10 years, Peter and I used to cook them supper. We shopped at the Greek market. Then he would come in at about 8 or 9 o'clock, have his glass of wine. We'd serve him dinner. I'd stay up with him with a Nikkei till 1 or 2 in the morning. He'd get up at 5, go back into New York. And at one certain point, we said, we got to move. We got to get out of the old Chinese restaurant. He said, no, stay there. Don't overreach. Took me 2 years to convince him that we should. And the people at the Latches were saying, get out of here. We want you out of here now, yesterday. And then, then at one point I said, they said, well, how much do you need? And I said, this much. And they said, we'll talk about it. What are you going to be doing tomorrow? I said, we're going in to perform at the JFK Library. He said, okay, we'll call you at around 5:15 or 5, I think it was 5. We'll call you. This was Till. He said, we'll call you at 5:23. And I knew what that meant. We didn't have cell phones. I had Peter pull off. And I called him from Dunkin' Donuts and then said, okay, you can call me back. And they said, okay, we've talked, you got the money. And then the check arrived. And it's just all these kinds of things have just happened. And I'm talking to my students too about paying things forward. I'm looking around. I'm working with Ibby and Clown right now, and every time I finish with them, I go, I didn't tap them well enough. I didn't do it right. I got an idea. We're going to lie on our backs. We're going to meditate to start for about 5-8 minutes so we can get settled. Then we're all going to lie with our heads next to each other and just harmonize. This is what Peter Avedon would love. We're just going to, and just harmonize with our voices, something like that. But there's NUITers, like Alex Silver is Adam's son, and he's just killing it out at Chicago Shakespeare, which is a big deal. It's a big deal. He played Thisbe, and Flute the Bellows Mender in the big Christmas show out there, Midsummer Night's Dream. And he's getting work. And you got to all come to see Scapin. June 14, 15, 16. I'm directing it. Taylor Patnow's going to play Scapin. And Cario Pereira Bailey's coming back to play Sylvester. He's out of Tisch school now. He had 3 years in the MFA, and they paid the whole thing for him. They wanted him so bad. Full boat. Didn't cost him a penny. And he's coming back. Kara Manson-Hume is coming back from LA. She's in film and television. She's in the show. So come and see it. It'll be Friday night, the 14th at 7. Then the big shindig is on Saturday, the 15th. 1 o'clock is the show, followed by a full spread. Everybody's rolling out the dog, the board. There's going to be food. There's going to be a bouncy moon, probably face painting. There's going to be, all kinds of drinks, and there'll be a cash bar. I mean, you'll have to pay a little bit, and then at 7 o'clock, and then a Sunday show. So I'm real excited about that. Do put it on your calendar, especially the 15th. And we're making the Davies Locker into a museum, so the kids can put all kinds of pictures from way back when with a string through all the years, and Post-it notes saying, I remember when Peter Amadon did this. And other people will put, he couldn't have done that, and I'll put up, you bet he did, things like that. Anyway, I got to let you people go. I've kept you way too long. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I honor you and I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Steve, is there going to be a Sunday?